to Breaking the Grade. Hello and welcome. We have Nancy Soni in today's episode of Breaking the Grade. Nancy has been breaking the norms in talent acquisition and how talent could be developed for the modern workforce with the students' interests and values in mind. With her, we'll dive into the realities the students are facing right now, how they have a better understanding of the world outside of school, how they can develop the skills and gain the experience companies are looking for right now. This conversation will be super helpful as you set off on your own grade-breaking journey. Now, it's time to bring in John Gamba, my co-host, and Nancy Soni. How is everybody today?
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone.
Great to see you, Nancy.
Good
John,
to see you as well.
Doing great here in West Philadelphia. The weather's getting a little bit warmer here.
That's good. Nancy, where are you located?
I'm in LA. I'm specifically in Manhattan Beach, about 5 blocks from the ocean. So starting to get warmer.
Okay, good.
No air conditioning needed, no heater needed, year round. I used to live in Santa Monica, so it was paradise.
No AC needed, though. There are parts of the year that it's definitely appreciated.
I hear that from Mexico, but let's talk about, Nancy, your journey to where you are today. Not so much California,
Sure.
but entrepreneurially, because you've done some really cool things in the past. And just kind of, give us the elevator pitch of you. Let's say we're going 50 floors up here. Let's hear about where you came from.
Absolutely. So I did not set out to be an ed tech founder. It was my experience comes purely out of just seeing the necessity to actually innovate in terms of how students are going through college. So part of my own journey is really kind of dates far back in that I went to college with the sole thought that I was going to medical school. And then after taking the MCATs, applying to medical school and having a freak accident that landed me in the hospital, it gave me a very different approach to, gosh, I don't know if this is what I want to be doing. And then I did a quick career pivot, ended up taking a job offer to be a tech recruiter in the height of the dot-com boom, and never looked back. So I spent 20 years building companies like Amazon, Netflix, Warby Parker, Paxos, Bonobos, and viewed over 4 million resumes, filled over 10,000 roles. And the reason why I sold my last company was to actually tackle something that was far more mission driven. So in selling my last company, I ended up doing a little bit of research. We kept coming across college grads who graduated from these great schools and a year later were still unemployed and couldn't find jobs and couldn't understand why. And the research that I did just had me completely just baffled. 50% of college graduates end up unemployed a year post-college graduation. 43% of college grads end up permanently underemployed, meaning starting out there, out of desperation, taking a job, working in retail, working at a restaurant, working as an Uber driver, making less than $35,000 a year with an expensive college degree that they didn't even have to, they're not even leveraging. And so on the other end, I spent 20 years where there is just no shortage of demand. We have over 8 million skilled jobs that go unfilled each year. And there's a way that we can actually solve this problem. So I'm happy to share how we're doing it next.
That's how we got to PathMatch. I want to ask John, because tell me if this a little bit hits very close to home, considering that your son is graduating from the University of Pennsylvania in a couple days.
Yeah, he is, with a dual degree in marketing from the Wharton School of Business and a cinema studies degree from the College of Arts and Sciences. So a little bit of left brain, right brain. And I could really relate to a lot of what you stated in working and interacting with JJ, my son, in terms of what he really wants to do. He has his own, friends who are going to Wall Street and going to consulting jobs. And then he's got his own dream where he wants to be a screenwriter. And wow, he would really value a tool like yours where he can go in, he can assess his skills, he can determine his talents, he can see what his personality might, and then have that lead him to a potential career pathway. Is that how it works with PathMatch?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially what we're building is, it's kind of one part eHarmony, one part Waze, like the navigation app, and then one part LinkedIn. So the initial piece is really helping a student understand what career path, what industry, what types of companies they would be interested in. And then our software basically gives them almost a content playlist of, here are the skills, here are the experiences that actually need to be on your resume. And then here's the network you need to start building to actually get your way through. So that's kind of the LinkedIn Waze piece. And then from there, so for instance, getting into investment banking, getting into management consulting, or getting into Netflix or NBC Universal, totally different routes. Mm-hmm. And so the average student doesn't know how to do that. And we actually give them kind of the routes to getting in. And so imagine push notifications that said, hey, this opportunity just opened up, make sure that your resume looks like this, and we'll get you in the door.
In terms of preparing for the show, I saw in one of your interviews that you've been in this space for 20 years and nothing has really changed, and it's time for disruption. I really related that because I've been in the education space for about that long, and we like to say it moves at a glacial pace. Tell us a little bit more about the need for disruption, why it hasn't been disrupted, and why you think this solution will help disrupt it.
Yes. So I am not here to change academia. That is I think that's not a fool's errand, but it's certainly something that is really difficult. The university system, the higher ed system does move at a very different pace. And so I think it's hard for us to actually try to change that. But the other piece is it would be actually very difficult to teach every single educator or career center advisor all of the different verticals on the other end of the workforce. So, just utilizing our 3 career paths, the entertainment media space, the investment banking or finance space, or management consulting, how you get your foot in the door is different. And when they hire is all different. I would hazard to guess that 80% of career center counselors and professors wouldn't actually be able to tell a student exactly how to do that. And so that is where consumer tech really does need to take over. I think the average person who hasn't spent 20 years building companies, viewing how different people got into different industries, they wouldn't be able to build this. And so that's where I feel like, the strong product founder market fit here in being able to build something that leverages all of the great technology that helps Tinder or Netflix or TikTok decide what content you should be looking at or who you be a match fit for, leveraging all that type of content for the individual student so that they can leverage those 4 to 6 years of college intelligently, thoughtfully, spending the time in the areas that actually yield some kind of ROI.
Was there a moment, John's built a business, I built a business, and there was an aha moment where I was like, this is the business. This I can do. Well, at least I think I can do. Did you have that aha moment? Can you remember when that was?
Yeah, it was in 2017 as I was starting to get all these resumes of these college students that we were trying to fill a ton of junior level roles for companies. And I realized, oh my gosh, like this is a big problem. And I've built all these engineering product teams for all of these companies. I understand all the underlying software and the things that we are capable of doing applied to other industries. Mm-hmm. I know that we can do this for students and we can make it free for them and we monetize on the employer. So I used to spend to the tune of $500,000 to $1 million on LinkedIn products. LinkedIn doesn't work for college students because they don't know what to put onto their LinkedIn profiles to be searched. Mm-hmm. And so that was when I just said, all right, I got to sell this business and go build the next one.
Sounds very simple. I got to sell this business and go on to the next one. How about that? John, you heard kind of the business model there. Can you react to that? You spend a lot of time, at University of Pennsylvania with your professor hat on there. I know you don't necessarily like that title, but can you give some feedback on the ideas here?
Well, yeah, Nancy mentioned 2 companies, and as a happily married man, she mentioned Tinder and eHarmony. So I don't know what these are, but I think they are matching platforms, and they rely on AI. They rely on an algorithm that really helps solidify the match, and their outcomes, their measures of success is in how well they match. I assume the underlying software for your platform is driven by AI and machine learning. Tell us a little bit about that, the importance of it, and how that's working as the platform and the business has evolved.
Sure. So my last company was actually a tech-enabled recruiting firm. We leveraged and built tech to do intelligent matching for people who were in their mid-career to senior level careers. So we already had the skills, we already had where they had worked previously to be able to match them to the right next opportunity. Essentially what we've built is a career matching algorithm that matches students to the right careers and to the right companies based on variables like their personality, their strengths, their interests. One new variable is, do they want to work remote or do they want to be in person? Yeah. How ambitious are they? How do they think about the world? And so we leverage that algorithm, gives a student 6 initial career matches. We give them content and a discovery engine that allows for them to determine what types of career paths and what types of companies would be probably the best suited for them. And then once they select that, we then kind of steer the ship in terms of what content they see, and then tell them, okay, based on if you want to go and work for XYZ company, here are the skills that they look for, and here's when they hire, here's how you prepare, here's who you network with.
So that's something I want to drill down a little bit there. One of my favorite books is The One World Schoolhouse by Saul Kahn. And one of the quotes in that book, which I found fascinating, was that the majority of today's 4th graders are going to enter into a job that hasn't been created yet. Wow, that makes me think on an AI-driven platform that's doing matching, knowledge discovery, knowledge capture and discovery on career pathways. I have to imagine that built into the algorithm is something related to soft skills. Saul Kahn's comment in that book was, it's not so much that we're going to train you on being a software engineer or train you on being a medical technician or train you on being an entrepreneur, as much as we're going to develop soft skills, critical thinking, collaborative problem solving, working on teams, EQ. Is that built into the platform? And are you developing ways to say to an employer who's paying you that these soft skills are embedded in this candidate and you should select them because of X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think soft skills are things that are built over time and experience. And I think just sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, just taking an exam and just writing a paper, those don't necessarily build some of the grit, resilience, and the communication skills that we need in the modern workforce. You know what does? Internships. Mm-hmm. And only 29% of college students graduate with a paid internship, and we need to solve this. Okay. So our platform, what it does is it actually gives a student an understanding of, great, what types of companies, what types of skills, and then we, as they build those, the hard skills, then we match them to internships, whether it's with startup companies freshman, sophomore year, so they can actually get those introductory internships to start building and actually seeing and leveraging and practicing the soft skills in the real world. Mm-hmm. To then, by their time they get to junior or senior year, they're able to leverage the experiences, the learnings from that into the bigger and bigger opportunities. So I hope that addresses it a little bit.
No, it does. I'll give you a practical example to talk this through a little bit. In my role at Penn's Graduate School of Education, I do a lot of supporting of edtech startups who are in hyper growth mode and are interviewing everyone from software engineers to this latest one. And it's just kind of on my mind right now, customer success, yep. Right? And we're seeing this idea of how do we identify, recruit, hire, develop a customer success person? And we have these debates that say, this person may not have the specific skills for onboarding, implementing, and developing a customer, but they might have experience in the classroom that they can carry into this role. And so long as they have grit and they have an ability to communicate really well and an ability to be self-directed because it's a startup and we really want self-directed, maybe those qualities will be a fit for this candidate beyond just seeing on a resume that they understand what interoperability is or they understand how to set up groups through a SaaS platform in EdTech. So we really battle. And I wonder if you think a lot about that as you're developing the algorithm and building this platform.
Yeah. So I think the core of our product is actually tapping into kind of the inherent, both the inherent soft skills. It's kind of, I was a psych major in college, and we kind of leverage a little bit of an MBTI to actually understand who this person is, how they think about the world, and how they approach things. And that's actually why we suggest career paths. So customer success versus account management versus an SDR, 3 different roles in the go-to-market realm, right? Where they're all different sales roles, but they require very different kind of personalities. Right. And so being able to actually pull that, give a student, you might be a good fit for this, and then giving them the agency to go and discover and say, you know what, I actually think I'm probably a better fit for customer success. And then we give them it's a combination of YouTube and TikTok videos to discover and actually start to say, oh, wow, it would be really helpful if I understood how to utilize Salesforce. Oh, wow, it'd be really helpful if I understand what SaaS means. It'd be really helpful if I understand these different key concepts. And then by having those things on their PathMatch profile on our platform, they become discoverable by startups as well as larger companies. And so a lot of that is their own self-discovery and then their self-identification that this is what I want to do. And then we can actually, through kind of algorithms, direct the content to pre-skill them in giving them that context of here are the things that you should be aware of, here are the things that need to be on your PathMatch profile, and here's how employers will find you. And so practice, right? To be a customer success person or a great salesperson, it's practice. You're not going to practice that. You can't practice that in a classroom. But if we can get you an internship where you're getting paid, that's going to make you, especially over 2 to 3 years worth of college, it's going to make you far more valuable to those employers on the other end. And you get an opportunity to actually see if that's something that you like.
Listen, I love John's questions, and I am not surprised at all. I have to admit that Nancy is knocking all these out of the park. I, from afar, was watching you when we hadn't even met at ASU GSV, and I saw you walking around like the badass breaker that you are at that conference. And I'm like, out of her way. Like, she's got investors to talk to and an industry to disrupt. You're not alone though. We got a chance to interview a bunch of different people. We did about 35 interviews of the Elite 200. So we have this segment called Big Breaks. Anna, who's a part of the Cascade Communications team, who's going to come up now from backstage, got a chance to interview all of these wonderful entrepreneurs while I was running around, on the floor there. So Anna, talk about Big Breaks, and we're going to get a chance to watch one together.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Well, for sure, it was an amazing experience. So Big Breaks is a special segment from Breaking the Grade. And the idea is that we feature companies that made Elite 200 from ASU GSV. And the goal here is to show the world entrepreneurs in the education space that they have just started an idea or a company, but they are already breaking the grade. They are changing the status quo about the way we learn, about the way we teach, and also how we grow as professionals and human beings. So check out this Big Break for Pato Bichara and Collective Academy.
I'm Pato Bichara, CEO of Collective. I'm a breaker because we're creating Latin America's University of the Future, focused on providing leadership, business, and technology skills to managers and leaders across the region. What led me to become a breaker was first going to recruit for a large consulting firm in Mexico and realizing that students didn't know who they were, what they wanted to do with their lives, or how to get a job. And then later in my career, being in venture capital, seeing that there were a lot of innovations innovations in many industries and not in the education one, and realizing that they had someone had to ask themselves, how does the university of the future looks like? And that's why we decided to build Collective. My company is breaking the grade by developing and launching a master program focused on accelerating leaders in multinationals and scale-ups and unicorns in Latin America, as well as working in enterprise learning programs with these companies and their managers along the region. The challenge that almost broke me was, how do you start a university from scratch? So I would sit down in coffee shops with a PowerPoint and try to convince students to enroll in our program, and that was definitely difficult, but totally worth it. My future plans to break the education industry include expanding into Colombia, Central America, and the US Hispanic market, and take our high-quality, relevant, and accessible education to other markets. My best advice to a fellow entrepreneur in the education space is falling in love with the problem, because the solution may vary, you're gonna iterate, you're gonna pivot, but if you actually are in love with the problem and obsessed about solving it, you're gonna figure it out.
So many moments in that, I'm like, I need to write that down. Anna, what was your takeaway from meeting with Pato?
Well, there's so many things, but I would say when he says falling in love with the problem, I think that's what takes you from where you are and to really working with things that matter and helping people overcome their challenges. I think falling in love with the problem is what keeps you on the right track. I think that's one, if I can say just one, that's it.
That's cool. All right, we're going to get back on track. Thank you, Anna, with Nancy. But we'll stick with the theme here, Nancy, of falling in love. Have you fallen? Could it be that you could fall out of love with your business? Because this is a big challenge that you're undertaking. And talk about the moments, most likely in the middle of the night, where you're like, what am I doing?
Yes, so my entrepreneurial journey in PathMatch has been, kind of ups and downs, high highs, low lows. But at the end of the day, I think it's so worth doing, because what we do for a living is, and how much we can make, and, all of those things are probably the most important decisions that we'll ever make. And yet we have so little relevant guidance online in a way that actually is very digestible for the modern student. So I am so passionate about this. And I feel like part of it is my daughter is 12. We've got to solve this problem. By the time she goes to college, I know the price tag of her college degree is probably going to be somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $400,000. And, as with a husband who's an investor, there's just no way that, like, with the ROI of a college degree being what it is, that we can't find a way to solve this. And so high highs, low lows, it's all worth it, because we're seeing the fruits of our labor. We ran a private beta in between 2020 and 2021 with 500 students. 98%, or 489 of those students, landed internships and jobs in the middle of a pandemic. So we tested this. We knew it worked. We changed the lives of 489 students. And since then, we've kind of scaled the platform to over 15,000. And so we know that at mass scale, this has the opportunity to actually change millions of lives. And I think that's what keeps me going every single day.
Building on that, here again at Penn's Graduate School of Education, we talk a lot about research to practice. What is the research that's out there that would inform your value proposition, your theory of action, your theory of change? And then what's the evaluative model that you've put in place to determine what outcomes will be delivered and how success would be measured? And I just heard that in your description of how you're you have your why, you have your vision, you have your values, but it sounds like you have some OKRs, some objectives and key results that you really think about that's going to lead to you being able to say, this has been a successful quarter or a successful year. What does success look like down the road, say by the end of this year and by the end of the next 3 years for PathMatch?
Yeah. So we have 2 milestones that we're constantly focused on, because we run a B2C2B platform. Mm-hmm. On the student side, it's scaling the student product to over 50,000 daily active users. and then scaling our employer side to 100,000 in monthly recurring revenue by the end of 2022. So those are kind of the two major milestones that we're primarily focused on. But then there's the outcomes, right? So our rather than a fiscal year, we actually work on the calendar, the academic calendar. And so it's, if 2020 we helped 489, in 2021 we actually helped over 1,600 students. 2021 to 2020, or 2022 to 2023, our goal is how do we actually get above 5,000? So if the current de facto, it's 50% of college grads end up unemployed, how do we shave that every single year, year over year, with the students that come onto our platform?
I love the quantitative, but also the qualitative, and a lot of times the fusion of both really makes for a great culture within the organization. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you is this idea of the Great Resignation, and we're thinking a lot about this in the education space as well as beyond, and we also like to say, never let a crisis go to waste, right? So we know that the Great Resignation stemmed from the crisis we felt through the pandemic, and how people were just like, I need a break, or I now can work remotely. I don't need to be chained to a desk. How do you think about that in terms of how that builds into your business model? And how do you think about that for young, soon to be and recently employed professionals? Do we think of the Great Resignation as a negative, or is there an asset lens here, and we change it, and we call it the Great Transition or the Great Opportunity, which is how I see it in terms of how the workforce is developing?
Yeah, I actually think I agree with you. It is the Great Transition. I think it's a huge opportunity for employers to understand what the potential workforce wants. I think the value in what we're building is actually all this really rich, relevant data that employers leverage to actually attract the right people. I think often in your first job search, you're just so desperate to get a job that you'll take whatever you want. But if we were intentional in terms of helping the right students and grads get to the right companies, retention would actually skyrocket. So there's another percentage that I actually focus on. The current retention numbers in terms of new grad hires, 50% of new grad hires turnover by year one, 70% turnover by year two. That means that employers aren't doing it right. And half the time, new grads don't even know what they want. And so what if we could actually change that? What if we can help a student understand, based on who you are, what you care about, here are the skills and the experience, like basically telling them, this is what your resume should look like for this company. And then on the other end, giving them very rich data in terms of, here are people who actually are really working hard to become what you want. The likelihood of them actually retaining is that much higher because of this, this, and this. And then to create that change, to give heads of HR or heads, C-level executives, this really rich data in terms of how to make decisions. What does your workforce actually want? And, how do we avoid another big Great Recession or Great Resignation?
John, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up with that. I've had some rich conversations with some RPOs that are out there that thinks about this challenge as in the candidate and the employee. What if we really think about when that candidate joins an organization and the time that would get them oriented into that culture? And I think about the company Glint. I don't remember who acquired them, but they were acquired within the last year or so. And really their theory of action, their theory of change was, how do you develop employee engagement programs to make the place a place that you'd want to work, where you get up in the morning, run to the shower, and instead of like, where am I going to go through this Great Resignation next? I'm really contributing here. Do you think about that ever in terms of the platform of determining how to make this transition from a new professional to a place that they'd want to stay long-term and contribute?
That was always the plan. It's a career for the user. It's a career navigation app.
Yeah.
I think now more than ever, Gen Z is voting with their values on anything work related, right? So I think as HR people start to grapple. We dealt with this with millennials, but as HR professionals and talent professionals grapple with this next Gen Z demographic, they really do have to shift how they hire and how they approach, talent acquisition, retention, and engagement as something that is very, very data driven. And so what we're basically offering is this really data rich platform to actually do thoughtful recruiting, retention, and engagement. And so for the individual, we're starting at college just because we have to constrain our market. But if we can help you land your first 2 internships and your first job, what happens after that, right? The average Gen Z is projected to have 18 jobs over 6 careers in their lifetime. Our goal is, how do we actually build the product that helps them really think through and navigate every single step of the way so that they can intentionally build the next step in their career?
When I was walking into PTAs, elementary schools, to talk to them about my first business, I knew exactly what these PTA moms were going to say was the problem with my business. And I would love to know, because we're having this phenomenal discussion and you've got amazing answers, what's the pushback you're hearing when you walk in and not necessarily talk to investors, but you talk to these big companies and they say, this isn't going to work because what do they say?
Well, right now it's that we just don't have enough people on our platform. The other thing from investors is that some investors just really don't love HR and recruitment tech. But at the end of the day, it is what employers are really grappling with. If you are struggling to hire, if you're struggling to retain, it's where you're going to end up spending the money, because it's your people who are your greatest asset, and you cannot achieve revenue targets without them. So when you look at the success of LinkedIn, which did $10 billion in top line revenue, of which 65% of their revenue came from their talent solutions, we know that employers are willing to spend. And if Gen Z is choosing not to be on LinkedIn and choosing to be on PathMatch, that kind of forces the hand. So,
yeah,
I'm convinced.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be breaking the grade if we didn't press on this a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that is, being broken. And on all guests, we try to make you a little uncomfortable. Besides this rosy look of vision, values, growth, efficacy, give us an example of, through this entrepreneurial journey, where you faced a challenge, where you may have even felt broken, like I can't do this, I can't. And then how did you overcome it? How did you persevere? How were you resilient? How did you say, all right, I have the cat's 9 lives. This is number 7. Let's go to number 8. We're going to get this done.
I have the perfect answer for this, and I knew exactly what I was going to say as you were speaking. Fundraising. I have worked in the venture-backed startup world for over 20 years. I knew the numbers going in, and yet still I proceeded. But certainly have had my learning curve over the last 6 months. So 2.3% of 2021 venture dollars went to females. I could probably peel back the onion and figure out how many of those dollars went to Asian females over the age of 30 who don't come from technology backgrounds or Stanford or Harvard. That was my challenge, was not being what venture investors are looking for in terms of white male CS major, who, whatever that might look like, and really telling the story in terms of, look, LinkedIn hasn't been disrupted yet, and it could be with this generation. And here are the things that we're doing to actually get there. So we actually just got a term sheet on Tuesday. It has been a, high highs, low lows over the last couple of months, but I have invested in myself in terms of better storytelling by hiring a pitch coach and really understanding what investors need to hear and what I wasn't actually doing well in the process. I delved deep into my own triggers in terms of the entire fundraising process to actually improve myself, to get to, if I already know that this is what I'm up against, how do I get better? And so
it's a great story. I'll share the story that we were in a similar situation on one business where we were counting on some fundraising. It fell through. We were working, after mortgaging the house and paying everybody else the last couple of payrolls, And my wife at the time said, well, where's our paycheck? We're getting paid in equity. And she said, well, I hope our gas takes equity because we don't have any gas money. And I'll never forget it, kind of rewind to the early part of this segment. My son, who's now 23, was 6 years old at the time. And he looked at me, he said, well, Dad, maybe it's time to get a real job. Talk about humbling and the motion and the emotions of being an entrepreneur. That was one of those moments where I felt broken.
Yeah.
But we persist, right?
I mean, I think that very few people talk about, trying to make payroll, right?
Yeah.
Looking at your bank account and saying, oh gosh, we only have this many months left, and feeling that pressure of making sure that you're providing for your team and all of those people that are depending on you, as well as putting on this rosy face to investors and saying, hey, I'm seeing something you're not seeing. Let me explain this to you and how this becomes a multi-billion-dollar business. So a lot of it is that's not the easiest thing to get through.
And also recognizing the importance of that spirit of partnership, whether it's your spouse who's watching you kind of go up and down and ebb and flow and shoot for the stars and they stick with you, to your partners, your internal stakeholders who say, we're here with you. We believe in this mission. This why is our why, and staying with you. And it sounds like you've got some really great team members who are working with you on this and have been on this journey with us. Tell us about the culture of the business.
Yeah, I think that's actually what gets me going every single day, is that we've actually attracted this amazing team of individuals who actually felt the problem and are so invested in solving it that come hell or high water, we'll figure it out. I think, I've built so many startup companies from the talent perspective. Culture eats strategy for lunch, right? And so intentionally in our hiring, I am looking for people who felt this problem somewhere early on, whether it's they felt they could have used this product and want to be part of it, whether it's, helping us with social media, whether it's building out the mobile app, whether it's, thinking through a product, whether it's driving revenue. It's, if you don't actually have this attachment with what it is that we're solving in the mission of the business, then you're not going to go, it's going to be really hard to kind of go the long haul. So our culture is this kind of combined interest in actually solving this problem for the next generation.
I think I sincerely hope that people listen to the whole show, but if they only listen to the last 5 minutes of this is the essence of breaking the grade. We were honest. John was honest about his family. You're honest about the culture. We're honest about making payroll. And so, when we dreamed up this show, we didn't know who was going to be on it, but we knew the type of people we wanted to attract. And you're it, Nancy. So
Thanks.
We will be cheering you on. You can tell that John will do anything to help you. So would I. There's a community out there as well. And if you don't need any help, I'll just get the hell out of your way, like I did in San Diego at that conference. But please, if you do need any, we are here to help. And we appreciate you being on the show for sure.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
What an inspiration. Onward and upward, and to be continued.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me on. It was nice to meet you.
Our next show, we're actually interviewing another Elite 200, a good friend of ours, Daniel Stedman. So we'll talk about what he's up to. That show will be coming out. For now, Nancy, we got your back, and we thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, Breakers. Next time on Breaking the Grade.